Now, from the Pope John Paul II Cultural Center in Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome to The World Over Live. We have some great guests for you tonight. Archbishop Charles Chaput has been named Archbishop of Philadelphia. In an exclusive interview, he'll talk about his appointment and the unique gifts he brings to the embattled Archdiocese. And later, Hollywood executive and committed Christian DeVon Franklin joins us to talk about how he manages to practice his faith openly in an industry not known for its faithful expression. And finally, the Archbishop of Washington, Cardinal Donald Wuerl, on his latest book about the glories of the Catholic Mass and his plans for a new seminary in the nation's capital. We have lots to cover, but first, here's the brief news from the world over this week. Catholics worldwide are sounding the call for help as East Africa's severe drought is becoming a humanitarian crisis. Pope Benedict XVI offered his prayers on Sunday, saying he was following with deep concern the news from the Horn of Africa. 10 million Africans, mostly in Somalia, are facing starvation and death. The British Catholic Agency for Overseas Development warned that this year's conditions are the worst in living memory, and that rain is not expected in critical areas until October. On Wednesday, the United Nations officially declared a famine in parts of southern Somalia. Refugee camps in Kenya and Ethiopia are overwhelmed by the influx of thousands of people daily. Pope Benedict said he hoped that international mobilization would increase to send timely relief to our brothers and sisters already sorely tried. If you'd like to provide financial assistance, Catholic Relief Services is accepting donations at crs.org. And the Vatican has announced the excommunication of the Chinese bishop ordained on July 14th in defiance of the Holy See. This is the second such excommunication in the past month. Father Joseph Huang Bing Zuhang had been warned of the penalty before the illicit ordination the Holy See revealed. The statement added that the Holy See does not recognize him as bishop of the Diocese of Shantou, and he lacks authority to govern the Catholic community of the diocese. The Vatican also lamented that some bishops had been forced to participate in the illicit ordination. They further praised Chinese Catholics who've resisted the pressure from the government-backed Catholic Patriotic Association to accept bishops who are not in communion with Rome. Meanwhile, the outspoken retired Bishop of Hong Kong, Cardinal Joseph Zen, weighed in on the matter, saying, "You can start a new church, but don't call it a Catholic church," end quote. He further referred to the growing conflict between Rome and Beijing as a war. And in Ireland, a government-commissioned report on clerical abuse in the Diocese of Cloyne has prompted an unprecedented denunciation of the Vatican by the Irish government. The 400-page Cloyne report detailed the alleged child sexual abuse of 19 clerics, as well as the handling or mishandling of suspected abusers by the diocese and its former bishop, John McGee. In light of the report, lawmakers charged that the Vatican undermined the Irish bishop's 1996 decision to begin reporting suspected cases of abuse to police. In Parliament on Wednesday, the government and all opposition parties unanimously backed a motion denouncing the Holy See. At issue is a confidential 1997 letter to the Irish bishops from the Vatican's Congregation for the Clergy and the then ambassador to Ireland. It warned the bishops that their child protection policy, particularly its emphasis on the need to start reporting all suspected crimes to police, violated canon law. That letter, the government says, gave individual bishops the backing to bury suspected abuse cases. On Wednesday, Vatican spokesman Father Federico Lombardi said the letter was in response to what the Vatican was told was a working document of the Irish bishops and not official policy. Nothing in the letter instructed the bishops to contravene Irish law, he said. He added that the prefect to the Congregation for the Clergy, Cardinal Castrión Hoyos, instructed the Irish bishops in 1998 that neither the Church nor her priests should impede the course of civil justice. Father Lombardi said the Holy See is evaluating the matter and an official response is forthcoming. Meanwhile, in light of it all, Ireland's Prime Minister, Edna Kenny, said proposed legislation requiring mandatory reporting of suspected child abuse, even if it violates the seal of confession, should occur. The measure would put priests in jail for up to 5 years for failing to tell authorities about sexual abuse crimes disclosed during confession. Father Tony Flannery of Ireland's Association of Catholic Priests said they are prepared to strongly resist the proposed law. He called it a total overreaction to the Cloyne report. Father Flannery predicted that after a few months, lawmakers will be more calm and reasoned about all of this. A major ecclesial appointment in the U.S. occurred Tuesday. Pope Benedict named Denver Archbishop Charles Chaput to lead the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. He replaces Cardinal Justin Regali, who is retiring. Over the years, Archbishop Chaput has gained the reputation in the U.S. of being the most outspoken defender of church teaching and its place in the public square. Archbishop Chaput inherits an archdiocese that is in the midst of fallout from the clerical abuse scandal. 4 priests and a former Catholic school teacher are facing criminal charges, and more than 20 other priests were suspended earlier this year, owing to credible allegations of misconduct. The recent troubles were on the mind of both Cardinal Regali and Archbishop Chaput at a Tuesday press conference in Philadelphia.
Throughout my ministry, to be faithful to the ideal of episcopal ministry. If I have offended anyone in any way, I am deeply sorry. I apologize for any weaknesses on my part in representing Christ and the Church worthily and effectively.
I do promise that no bishop will love the people and priests of this local church more than I will. No bishop will give more of himself than I will give. And no bishop will try harder to help persons who have been hurt by the sins of the past, or work harder to strengthen and encourage our priests and renew the hearts of our people.
More with Archbishop Chaput and what's ahead for the Archdiocese of Philadelphia in our next segment. And the Obama administration has indicated that it plans to require health insurance providers to cover contraceptives as part of the new federal health care law that will take effect in 2013. The Institute of Medicine, an arm of the National Academy of Sciences, made the recommendation to the Department of Health and Human Services. The Institute further classified contraceptives, sterilization procedures, abortifacients, and abortion-inducing IUDs as preventative health services, and as such, should be covered at no additional cost. On Tuesday, HHS Secretary Kathleen Sebelius, a Roman Catholic, praised the recommendation as historic for women's health and preventative care. Cardinal Daniel DiNardo, the head of the Bishops' Pro-Life Committee, denounced the recommendation, saying pregnancy is not a disease and fertility is not a pathological condition to be suppressed by any means technically possible, end quote. He called such a mandate a new threat to the rights of conscience that will force all men, women, and children to carry health coverage that violates the deeply held moral and religious convictions of many. And traditional Christian teachings on marriage is in retreat in New York after the passage of its same-sex marriage law. Episcopal Bishop Lawrence Provenzano of Long Island is ordering gay clergy who are living with their partners to either tie the knot or quit living together. Bishop Provenzano said, "I need to be mindful that the Church has always asked people to live in committed, monogamous, faithful relationships." He's giving the cohabitating clergy 9 months to figure it out. Meanwhile, 3 of New York's 6 Episcopal dioceses have sanctioned same-sex weddings. At a ceremony this past week the Israeli government opened full access to a site on the River Jordan where it's believed Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist. Since Israel took control of the area from Jordan in the 1967 Middle East War, pilgrims have had to coordinate their visits with the Israeli military because of security concerns and leftover landmines. The Israeli military now says the baptismal site and the adjacent churches are in a completely mine-free zone, and they insist no danger is posed to tourists or worshippers. Both Blessed John Paul II and Pope Benedict have visited the site, but made their pilgrimages on the other Jordanian side of the river. And my new book with Laura Ingram of The I Zing, Americans' Cultural Decline from Muffin Tops to Body Shots, landed on the New York Times bestseller list this week. I want to thank all of you who bought a copy, and if you didn't, what are you waiting for? It's an insightful and fun romp through the culture and all that ails it. If you have a zing of your own, a complaint about something you saw or experienced, and hopefully confront it, send it to us. Send it to Raymond at RaymondArroyo.com. Put zing in the subject line, and the best zings will get a signed copy of The I Zing. And I may read a few next week. When we return, the former Archbishop of Denver, Charles Chaput, is here to talk about his new post in the city of brotherly love. The World Over Live continues in a moment. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over. My first guest tonight is a member of the Capuchin Order, and he spent the last 14 years as the shepherd of the Archdiocese of Denver, Colorado. He's been an outspoken defender of church teaching in the public square and a tender evangelist. He's also a member of the Potawatomi tribe and only the second Native American to be ordained a bishop. This week it was announced that Pope Benedict had tapped him to become the new Archbishop of Philadelphia, taking over for retiring Cardinal Justin Regali. He comes to the venerable diocese at a time when it is reeling from a sex abuse scandal. Here to talk about his appointment, his ministry, and his hopes for Philadelphia, would you welcome Archbishop Charles Chaput.
Thank you, Raymond.
Your Excellency, thanks for being with us. First of all, congratulations. I know on July 5th, you got this call from the nuncio. Why did you accept this position in Philadelphia, given all the challenges there on the ground?
Why did I accept Philadelphia? Because the Holy Father asked me to. And I have the custom of saying yes when whoever is my superior asks me to do something. And to be asked by the Holy Father is a special kind of hearing the voice of Jesus, so I said yes without hesitation. Really.
You had to hesitate a little bit. I mean, given all that you've been reading and hearing about Philadelphia, particularly the turmoil related to the sex abuse cases there.
No, I didn't hesitate a minute. That's been the way I've been trained as a Capuchin to respond to requests of church authority. It's the voice of Christ, and I really do believe that. So if authority asks, I'm sure God will give the grace to accomplish whatever He wills. So I'm doing this with confidence in God. Certainly not myself, but confidence in God, and also confidence in the good people in Philadelphia and the clergy there. We'll work this out for the praise and glory of God and the good of the community.
Mm-hmm. Now, you've had a couple of weeks to think about this appointment, Your Excellency. Why do you think you've been sent to Philadelphia, and what gifts might you bring to the community there?
Well, I don't know why I was asked to go. We're never told that when we're asked to assume responsibility for a diocese. So I would be guessing as much as you, and I think the speculation is that I was asked to do some difficult things, the visitation of Legion of Christ, another visitation of the church, and I write a lot and I talk a lot, so I think all of that stuff came together so that the Holy Father made the judgment that this is what he wanted me to do. I'm confident of the church. Philadelphia is all of us together, the priests, the people. I have some wonderful auxiliary bishops that Cardinal Regali has chosen and mentored through the years. So this all gives me confidence that the future is in God's hand, and I'm happy to go along with it.
We're talking to Archbishop Charles Chaput, the newly appointed Archbishop of Philadelphia. Your Excellency, this is a huge diocese, 1.5 million faithful. Denver has about 500,000 faithful in your care now. Denver is an extraordinary place, it should be said. The seminary's thriving, the people are so excited, they have a great affection for you and the local church. Are you concerned, given the sheer magnitude of the Philly Archdiocese, that you might be transformed into an administrator and less of an evangelical apostle?
Yes, I am. I think that's the biggest concern I have. I've never had the experience of working in such a big, complex diocese, and I think there is a possibility that the demands of making decision administration could lead me away from what I like to do, which is to preach and to teach and to be very much involved in the life of the people of the church in a personal, direct kind of way. But I'm going to try. I'm going to try to do both. I certainly have to be responsible for the administration of the church. A bishop is an overseer, but also I'm called to be an apostle, which is to preach the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So I'm going to try to make both parts of that ministry work.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk to you about your role in the visitations to the Legionnaires of Christ and to this Australian bishop who wanted to ordain women. You were sent on both those visitations at the behest of the Holy See. Now, given the fallout in Philadelphia over the sex abuse crisis and the loss of confidence in the church, what lessons did you learn from those visitations, and might you bring them to bear in this new assignment?
What I learned from those visitations was how good the church is. And even those who would disagree with me or with the teachings of the church are good people, and the Holy Spirit is active in their life, and there is a possibility that they'll receive the truth of the church because of the power of the Holy Spirit in their lives. So in all those situations, there was much more good than there were mistakes. And so I think it's always important to acknowledge that and to build on that. I've also learned from those experiences that the church has to be persistent and insistent, day in and day out, in proclaiming the gospel in all its detail and in every circumstance. So to trust in the Holy Spirit, to trust in the goodness of people, to listen, but also to know it's important to be insistent on the total faith of the church in all circumstances.
Your Excellency, this grand jury report that came down in February called out the Archdiocese of Philadelphia for a lack of transparency and for their handling of these sex abuse cases. They claim there were a good number of priests who were still in active ministry who had charges against them. How do you restore confidence in that community and among the clergy, some of whom feel that a few of their brother priests were unjustly suspended by your predecessor, Cardinal Regali?
I think the way you restore confidence is to love people and to let them know that you love them, and that you also love the truth and that you intend to embrace the fullness of the truth. This takes time, and again, it's a community effort together. So I don't expect that for those who've lost confidence, it can be restored overnight. But I think it can be restored if we work together to both embrace the truth and to embrace the fullness of love in all those situations.
Now, it's rather extraordinary to have a man so identified with the West and the Midwest move to a venerable Eastern Archdiocese. Are you at all concerned about that cultural shift, the laid-back Westerner relocating to an Eastern cosmopolitan center?
Well, you know, it has happened recently with Archbishop Dolan, a man of St. Louis who became the Archbishop of Milwaukee and then went to New York. Cardinal George, who's from Chicago, was the Archbishop of Portland, Oregon, before he became the Archbishop of Chicago. So maybe it's not as rare as we perceive it to be. Additionally, I lived in Western Pennsylvania, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, for 10 years. 4 years as a seminary student, 3 years as a seminary professor, and then 3 years working in the administration of the Capuchins of the Pittsburgh province. So Pennsylvania is not foreign to me. I lived there and loved it when I was there. So I'm not at all concerned about that. At the same time, I love the West. Denver is a wonderful place. The church here is strong and vital, as you said. I would have been very, very happy to serve out my time as bishop here in the Archdiocese of Denver. So I'll miss it. I'll miss the people here very, very much. I have an extraordinary staff, and I'm grateful to them too. The priests here have been wonderful companions in the proclamation of the gospel. But I'm going east, and I'm going to embrace it, and I'm going to love it, and I hope that they will embrace and love me in return.
Now is that the Capuchin background coming forward that I hear there?
Well, I'm a Capuchin from head to toe, so perhaps it is. I'm very, very, very happy to be a Capuchin, and am grateful for what the Capuchins have given me.
How did being a Capuchin shape your ministry, do you think? In all my interactions with you over the years, I've always been very aware of your Franciscan heritage. It seems to me there's a gentleness of spirit, an adventurous spiritual strength there. How do you think that will play, if you will, in Philadelphia?
I think the heart of being a Franciscan is to understand that God is our Father and we can trust Him. That's why Franciscans can embrace poverty, because they trust the providence of God. But if God is our Father, that means every person is our sister or our brother, and that we can have a confident fraternal relationship with other people. So to be a brother is at the heart of to be a son of the Father and a brother is at the heart of being a Franciscan. I think I was formed that way, and I think that has influenced the way I'm a bishop. And I'm grateful. I'm so very grateful for that.
I want to get into a few issues with you, Archbishop, before our time runs out. In a speech not long ago, you said, "I believe abortion is the foundational human rights issue of our lifetime." How do you see the issues and the life issues playing out now vis-a-vis Catholic health care, as well as in your own ministry in the diocese?
Well, Raymond, that's a very complex question. I don't know how I can answer it briefly. The first part, it's obvious that abortion is the foundational issue of our time, foundational moral issue of our time. There's nothing without the right to life. And it should be rather astonishing to all of us who are Americans that we think differently in the community on that matter. You know, to protect individual human beings and their right to life seems to be at the heart of our common life together. And for us not to agree on that is rather astonishing. Catholic institutions, whether they're hospitals or parishes or schools, have to be committed to what it means to be a Catholic and to think about how central this issue of the dignity of every individual is. You know, it's a reason we stand where we do on abortion, on embryonic stem cell research, on immigration, and all the hot button issues of the time. So if we can come to a deeper commitment to the protection of individual human beings' dignity and working for the common good, we'll be a transformative force in our culture and our society.
Your Excellency, I'd like your thoughts on what I know continues to be a source of controversy and conversation among the bishops. Your thoughts on banning pro-choice politicians who are Catholic from the sacraments, particularly communion, if they demonstrate a continued defiance of church teaching and indeed an advocacy for things the church is opposed to, particularly on the life issues and as regards marriage. What should be done?
I think that the bishops really do agree on the process that we should use. And you know, first of all, we talk to the individuals who might stand against the teachings of the church. If they're public officials, it's important for us to talk to them individually. That's the beginning point. If they continue to disagree with us, I think it's important for us to continue that dialogue. At a certain point, it's important for us to tell the politicians who act contrary to church teaching on these important matters that they shouldn't receive Holy Communion because they're no longer personally in communion with what the church teaches. And if they would refuse to follow those directions from their bishops, I think it would be important for the bishop to publicly say something. I think that's what the bishops have commonly agreed to do together. And so that's going to be my policy in dealing with all these issues as it has been in the past.
There's a wonderful line I read in one of your speeches where you said, "There's no more room in American life for easy or tepid faith." Do you feel Catholics in the macro are practicing an easy and tepid faith at the moment?
I certainly think so. I think our church attendance on Sunday demonstrates that. You know, the majority of Catholics are not very clearly committed to the practice of the faith in an ongoing communal way. And that's really destructive of the community as a whole. So I think it's very important for all of us, not only bishops, but for all of us in the church, to invite people back to a clear embrace of the teachings of Jesus, a commitment to His being our personal Lord and Savior, and then to let that affect our daily life. But I think the beginning point for so many people would be to return to Sunday Mass and an embrace of the life of the church community.
In Denver, you made a decision regarding a gay couple that had a child in one of the diocesan schools. Could you talk briefly in our remaining moments about how you see the gay marriage movement and the advance of same-sex marriage legislation in various state houses? And will you continue the policy you instituted in Denver regarding gay parents of children enrolled in Catholic schools?
Well, you know, Raymond, it's a little bit more complicated than you've articulated it. Actually, I supported the decision of the local pastor on that matter, and the pastor rightly came to the conclusion that it causes confusion and conflict in a Catholic school community if there are parents of children who publicly live in a way that challenges the teachings of the Church. And that's what this was about. It was about a public challenge to the teachings of the Church. And people send their kids to Catholic schools, spend a lot of money to do that in order to give them an environment where the fullness of the faith is taught and lived as much as possible. I don't know what the policy of the school system of the Archdiocese of Philadelphia is. I'll be anxious to find that out. I'm at the very beginning stages of inserting myself into the life of that church. It doesn't really officially begin until September the 8th, so I need some time to listen and to learn before I start making statements about what I will do or what should be done. I think that you understand it's important to be prudent on these matters.
Absolutely. As you've watched gay marriage legislation pass in the New York legislature and seen the movements all across the country to legalize same-sex marriages in other states, right, what is your position on the issue?
Well, you know, it's very clear that the family is the foundational unit, not only of the Church, but of society. And the reason why the Church stands where it does on the meaning of marriage is we believe that what leads to stable human beings are parents who love one another and provide the security of a home. So marriage is the love of a single man for a single woman in a faithful context of love and service in order to provide an environment for children. You know, marriage is about children, essentially about children. And if we change the meaning of marriage, it's going to lead to a great deal of instability in the broader community, but also in the Church. And we believe the family is the domestic church, and that's why the Church is so interested in this matter. You know, for us, the divorce is a similar kind of issue. It's not just gay marriage; it's also easy divorce. All these things that make family life unstable are destructive to individuals, but also to the common good. And so the Church has to be a persistent voice on supporting the traditional meaning of marriage, which is the meaning that God has given to the union of a man and wife for the sake of children.
Your Excellency, a final question. I found a quote where you said, "Be Catholic, really forcibly, unapologetically Catholic, and the future will have the kind of articulate, morally mature leaders it needs." How do you intend to spread that message to the people of Philadelphia?
Well, I hope to model it myself by being engaged on these issues in a public and, I hope, convincing way. I will ask my priests, my clergy, my deacons also, our Catholic school teachers, all those involved in evangelization, to be confident of the faith and to preach it with joy and consistency and the totality of our faith. And I think if we give one another the confidence of good example, it's going to be transformative for the Church. So the bishop can't be the only one who does this. We have to do it together. But if we do it together, the Lord will reign in our hearts, and then we'll be a huge force for good change in society.
Well, you certainly have modeled that in both your present role in Denver and in your previous appointments, and certainly in all my interactions with you. So I thank you for your service so far, and we look forward to following you as you go to Philadelphia.
Thank you, Raymond. I really hope you'll also pray for me in these days of preparation and also in the days of my service as bishop there.
Count on it. And I know that all of us at EWTN, and I'm sure our entire audience, will be praying for you as well. Archbishop Chaput, thanks again.
Thank you.
To follow Archbishop Chaput and all the doings of the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, visit archphilia.org. That's archphila.org. When we return, is it possible to practice one's Christian faith in the entertainment industry. Studio executive DeVon Franklin opens up about his faith and work when The World Over Live continues. Stay with us.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
My next guest is currently a vice president of production for Columbia Pictures in Hollywood. He's one of the youngest studio executives in the industry, a committed Christian who also finds time to be a preacher and a motivational speaker. I sat down with him recently to talk about his life as an executive in Hollywood and about being bold and open about his faith. He's just finished a book called Produced by Faith: Enjoy Real Success Without Losing Your True Self. Here's my interview with DeVon Franklin. Take a look. DeVon, first tell me, why did you write this book, Produced by Faith? You open with a story. You were the executive in charge of overseeing the most recent remake of The Karate Kid.
Yes.
Tell me about that and how that sort of illustrates your approach to reconciling your faith with your work.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it was an amazing experience to shoot all on location in Beijing. And, you know, being over in a different country, a different culture was amazing. And it was the first time as a studio executive that I was running my own movie. And that process and the pressures and whatnot, certainly there was a lot of responsibility. And the story that I tell that opens the book was, you know, I observed the Sabbath. And so in observing the Sabbath, I was forced with this decision because we were in a hutong, and a hutong is an old ancient neighborhood in Beijing. So right next to major skyscrapers and modern buildings, there are these ancient neighborhoods that still exist. And so we were trying to get this shot, and wouldn't you believe, the sun was starting to go down. And I was like, oh man, you know, do I stay on set? No one would have known. My bosses weren't there, no one would have known. Do I stay on set and you let the shot happen, or do I, you know, observe like I normally do and say, hey, you know what, I got to go back to my hotel room. And in that instance, I said, I'd much rather please God than to compromise what I believe just to get the shot. So I ended up leaving, went back to my hotel room. The production didn't, you know, fall apart. Everything was fine. And it felt good to be able to take that moment and say, hey, you know what, I'm okay with whatever might happen. And actually in that day, the following day, you know, while I was, you know, reading the Word, God gave me the idea and the revelation for this book.
Interesting how that kind of ambushes you. He ambushes you when you least expect it.
Yes, he does.
Now, you talk in the book and you say you're very open about your faith in the workplace. Hollywood has not always been
they haven't.
The institution most receptive to these values of faith, and particularly Christian faith. Yet you say here you've always been forthcoming and forthright with your faith, and that it gives you a competitive edge. How so?
First of all, I think people in Hollywood respect when you are an individual and you are clear about who you are. And for me, in being confident and saying, yes, I'm a Christian, this is what I believe, it actually, people are more curious about it. They're like, oh, really? Well, oh, okay, well, tell us, all right. And I think people respond to that confidence and that that understanding who I really am, right? The other thing is, in talking to people, I'm not out there like evangelizing, whatever. The sermon that people may get from me, he says, hey, how you doing? How's everything going? Going beyond the deal and really trying to connect to the person. That to me is a real outgrowth of being a Christian in the business. Not so much, you know, here, have you read this
proselytizing and hitting them over the head with it. Because I'm sure you and I know, we won't mention them, name them, but you and I probably know a good number of directors, producers, and actors who've suffered a great deal by being very outspoken about their faith, or equated with projects that were spot on the nose, faith-based projects. And they find it difficult to be cast. They are on a bit of a blacklist here and there. Is that a reality, and are you concerned about that? Coming out with a book like this?
Sure. You know what? I'm not concerned about it. In my experience, that has not been the reality that I have faced. Part of what I had to do was to be honest about what God was calling me to do. Whatever may, let the chips fall where they may. This was a message I needed to get in the world. I needed people to know you don't have to compromise your faith to find success. And whatever may come from that, and if what may be viewed as negative, right? is not really negative. All things work together for the good of those that love him. So I didn't really have a whole lot of trepidation about losing opportunity because of coming out with the book. I felt like it was a necessary message. I felt like it was a timely message. And again, in my experience in Hollywood, it has actually been much more rewarding and much more supportive. I mean, people who know I've done the book have been incredibly supportive about it.
And I think as an executive in Hollywood, this gives you a particular insight.
Yes, it does.
That quite honestly, many of your peers, I know from having met a few of them, you talk to them about a concept or a given piece, and they get that blank look because they've never met people that actually go to church a couple of days a week. Or what do you mean? You pray alone? You go in a room and you pray alone?
Yeah.
Regularly?
Regularly?
Have you talked to a therapist about this? You know, that's usually the approach. So it's a very foreign, they almost treat it like it's an alien life form over there. You don't have that. Because you're a part of this community, I imagine it actually gives you an interesting insight. And have you brought projects to the table and been involved in projects that perhaps wouldn't have gotten off the ground had you not seen them?
Absolutely. I mean, Jumping the Broom, you know, a movie that just came out, and we are experiencing a lot of success with the film. That film would not have come to be if I wasn't passionate about my faith and saw the faith in that film, the potential for faith in that film. In that movie, you know, we got the script and said, hey, how can we put faith into this? And my predisposed passion for wanting to tell movies that inspire people and that also preserve our values, if I didn't really want to do that, Jumping the Broom would have never existed, because it was a project that I had to, you know, champion and, you know, put together with Bishop Jakes and Tracy Edmonds and the other producers that were involved. And it was truly a labor of love and faith. So bringing that to the table, when you talk about competitive edge, part of it is seeing an audience that others don't see. That's underserved, and understanding how to tap into the audience with integrity. Not pander, not downplay. My goal is, when we're making films in this space, better production values, better acting. You know, let's make movies in this space that are real movies, not just direct-to-video products.
Now, what do you say to people who say, you know, and I get these letters all the time. I have a son, I have a daughter, they're interested in the theater, they're interested in film. But we really don't want to have anything to do with those people or with that whole Hollywood scene. You would say what to them?
I would say, well, first of all, when I was growing up, people would tell me, how can you be a Christian and go into Hollywood?
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Oakland, California, the San Francisco Bay Area. And they would say, how can you go into Hollywood? I said, well, how can I not? You know, we're told, go ye therefore, right, into the world. We're supposed to be in it, but not of it. So how can I be afraid? So afraid of my faith, so afraid of that maybe, you know, my faith isn't strong enough, that I say, well, you know what, I'm only going to play here. I'm not going to go into Hollywood. No. We serve a God who is all powerful, and our faith is all powerful. And because we believe in him, that makes us all powerful. So I can go into an industry that others may say, how can you do it? Well, God is with me. But it comes back to this. What is your motivation? Why are you doing it? I tell anybody that wants to go into Hollywood or any career, why are you doing it? Have you asked God, God, is this your will for my life?
Right.
Is this really what you want me to do? We can't just aspire to do things because it's what we want to do. We have to really check it at the altar and say, God, I want your will more than I want this business or this aspiration.
And you break this book down in terms of a production of a film, and you say this is part of the process. Describe that a bit. What should be the process? I'm imagining there's a young guy or young gal watching. They're in college now. They're studying film. They're studying theater. What do you advise them?
What I advise them is this: the process of making a film. The book is divided into development and production. A movie that you see at the theater went through development first, then production, and then it gets released. Same with us. All of us, in some way or shape or form, want to get into production in our life. But the reason why we're not in production is we need more development. You know, God would not send us into production if we weren't ready. But we get frustrated. We say, hey, no, I'm ready. He's like, no, you're not. You need to work on your character. We need to work on your integrity. We need to work on some issues, some anger issues, you know. There are things that he wants to get out of us.
Skills. And you need to perfect.
Right. I mean, that skill set is necessary, because if you think that you can just get in production in your career and just wing it, it won't happen. You'll flame out. You'll be an overnight success that will be gone just as fast as you got there. And God is not preparing us for momentary success, but for lifelong, sustainable success.
And eternity.
And eternity. Exactly. And that's, it's like, if we're getting ready for eternity,
this is a big production. This is a long production.
It's a long production. Exactly. And so what I tell people, one, with development, you got to start with what's your big idea. You know, why are you here? What are you doing? With any movie, you have to know what the movie's about.
Right.
You got to know. With Jumping the Broom, an upper-class family and a working class family meet for the first time at a wedding on Martha's Vineyard. That's the concept. What's the high concept for your life? We have to know that, because how can you start developing a script when you don't know what it's about? Same with God. God wants to develop a major hit out of your life, but you need to identify what is your life about.
You talk a bit about spiritual practices that may be necessary during those big decision moments in your life.
Yes.
When you're about to change career, when you're considering who to cast in your life, and you talk about bringing people into your life that way, which I like. Describe some of those spiritual practices that we may have to undertake.
Yeah, first and foremost, prayer. We have to, commit to a consistent prayer life to really hear and seek the word and the will of God. The second one is you have to read the word. You have to. I mean, I talk about in the movie business, when you're in production, you have these things called dailies, right? So you see every day what was shot the previous day. So when you look at the dailies, you can tell how well the production is going. Right. In my version, in the book, I use the dailies as a metaphor. How good are your dailies? Are you spending time with Him? Are you reading the Word? Are you seeking His guidance through what the Scripture says? And then another thing, which I found very, very effective, is fasting. Fasting. There's certain types of power that only come through prayer and fasting. And so incorporating fasting into those times when I'm trying to make a major decision has been incredibly important, because there's sometimes we can't hear Him until we cut out something and we sacrifice. Paul calls us to submit our bodies as a living sacrifice.
Well, you also talk about breaking the cardinal rule of Hollywood, that commandment, and turning off the BlackBerry, which is hard for all of us and outside of Hollywood.
I know.
But it's essential, because you can barely hear yourself, much less God, every day.
Correct.
So you almost need that time away, so you can come back and re-experience life. I could never figure out until years later, I guess when I grew up, when I was a kid, I learned that Irving Berlin, the great composer, he would compose in the caboose of a train. He would literally rent a caboose and take that caboose cross-country and back again when he was writing his scores. And I said, why would he do such a thing? To get away and break away from all distractions. It was only that clickety-clack and his piano. I now wish I could rent my own caboose and go writing coast to coast, go away. I think the audience might thank me for that.
Sure.
In your final analysis, what do you hope people take away from Produced by Faith, enjoying real success without losing your true self?
My final analysis, what I want people to do and take away is, one, you do not have to compromise your faith to find success. What we need to do is understand that our faith is much more powerful than we give it credit for. God has a plan. He has a script for our life. He wants to direct a major hit out of our life. Sometimes we get frustrated, we get angry, we get upset, so much so that we want to write His name off our script. We say, no, God, I can direct it better than you can. I'm saying, no, listen. You think Hollywood makes hit movies? Nothing in comparison to the story that God is trying to tell in your life. I want people to take away from that in this book. One, I don't have to compromise. Two, God is up to something major. I mean, He has a plan for our life that is bigger than anything we can ever anticipate, but we just need to give Him the chance to work it out. Let Him take us through development. Let Him take us through production. And the story that He creates in our life, not only will we be rewarded, but others will see His divine power in action.
What about those who say, things are so horrible out there, I need to pull away. I need to unplug. We're not going to have TV, no iPad. We're not going to have anything in this house. Personally, I think it's a bad decision for the reason that why are we hiding out and creating our own little ghetto? For what?
Right.
Would you agree?
I would totally agree. And I also talk about this in the book. We have to be in the game. We have to participate. Here's the thing, culture is going to influence whether we are part of it or not. So we need to be a part of culture to help influence those people in the right way. We need to be a part of it. We need to contribute. When we take our ball and go home and the game is still going on, how can we affect the score? We can't. So we have to be a part of the game. We've got to suit up, and because there are people out there that need us. There are people out there that are struggling. We have the word. We have the gospel, and we have to be in the game in order to get the gospel to those who need it most. And there's a wide audience of people that are receptive. But if we say we're not going to affect culture and we're only going to play in this sandbox, we're limiting those that we can affect the most.
Yeah, the apostles didn't spend all of their time in the boat talking to each other.
No, they didn't.
Produced by Faith, enjoy real success without losing your true self is available from Simon & Schuster at bookstores everywhere. Up next, Cardinal Archbishop of Washington Donald Wuerl is here to talk about the Mass and his plans for a new seminary. The World Over Live continues in a moment. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. My last guest this evening is the head of the Archdiocese of Washington, Cardinal Donald Wuerl. The Cardinal, well known for his catechetical and teaching ministry, has written a new book called The Mass, The Glory, the Mystery, the Tradition. It coincides with the new translation of the Mass set to go into effect this November. I sat down with him recently to discuss the work, as well as a special project he's undertaking in the Archdiocese of Washington. I started our conversation by asking him about the initiative, A New Diocesan Seminary. Take a look.
A sign of what I take to be the movement of the Spirit, what's going on today. We have so great a response in terms of vocations, younger vocations, men coming out of high school, men in the early years of college. We have so many that we're opening a college-level seminary and house of formation.
And you're calling it?
We're calling it the Pope John Paul II. It'll be Blessed John Paul II Seminary, because we have here in Washington, we have the Catholic University of America. We have arguably the best school of philosophy in the country right there.
Yep.
And so we will provide the spiritual, the pastoral, the human formation of these men who will get the best academic preparation possible.
Now, why do you need a seminary when you've got Mount St. Mary's, you've got Baltimore, and you've got these other seminaries nearby? Why open one here?
Because none of them are college level.
I see.
There is no college level seminary anywhere near this Washington, in the Washington metropolitan area.
Isn't that something?
Well, I think it's a part of what happened after the council, where the emphasis was on older vocations. But now we're seeing this breath of the Spirit moving through the church, and younger people coming forward to say, I'd like to think about that. So, Raymond, this is why we need a seminary. We need to be able to form these men close to home. They're a part of this church. They know the priests of this church, and this is the place where they should be formed.
I don't know how you find time to run this diocese, which I have to tell you, every other week you are coming out with a new initiative, with a new outreach to the people, to the youth, to come back to confession. You see it on the sides of buses and on billboards. I mean, there really is a concerted, consistent effort here to evangelize and reach people. How do you find time to write all of these books in the midst of this other work?
Well, there's a lot of excitement going on, and you're absolutely right. Here in this Archdiocese, thanks to the Spirit, we have wonderful, faithful laywomen and laymen, great religious deacons, and a presbyterate that is truly alive in the Spirit. And that's happening all over the country. But we just have a lot of good things that we're trying to accomplish, as you point out, trying to revitalize and renew the sacramental life of our faithful. The reason I do the writing is because somehow we have to be able to re-engage that generation that's drifted away. You know them so well. You work so hard to try to reach them and bring them the good news. That's what we're trying to do. That's what I try to do in my writings.
This book, it's simply called The Mass, and it's a new release. You and Mike Aquilina co-wrote this book, and it is an exploration. And I have to tell you, it landed on, the galley landed on my desk, and I said, oh, another book on the Mass, here we go. And I started reading it, and I was totally taken in, because it forces you to stop taking for granted, as you say in the book, what we do every week. It is what we do. Why did you want to write this book, and what do you hope it accomplishes?
For the very reasons that you gave. We're going to be doing the preparation all over the country of the catechesis of our people for the new English translation. I thought, why would we spend all this time and energy on talking about a few word changes when at the heart of the mystery is the glory of the Mass, the representation of the death and the resurrection of Christ, on the altar, the holy sacrifice of the Mass that we can enter and we can share in. So that's what led to the idea. And when we started doing it, Mike Agbalina, who I have known for 1,000 years, he was editor of the Catholic paper in my former diocese. And he said, we must make sure that this could be read by young people and by those very people that we're talking about that have drifted away. So that was our norm. We said, let's make the chapters short, readable, but let's make sure they're packed with teaching. So that's what we tried to do.
Yeah, well, you've accomplished it. I mean, it was really some of the quotes, the consistency of the Mass. When you see the historic consistency of it, you have that great quote from Justin in the book that just sticks in my mind. That's what struck me most. We're tapping into this moment in time, but this moment reaches clear back and forever forward.
And this is what makes the Mass what Catholics do. We're inserted into the continuity that brings us back to the Last Supper. Only in the Catholic Church do you have a living apostolic continuity that allows you and me today to say, when I go to Mass, what's happening is what the apostles experienced with Jesus. And how do I know that? Because it's been passed down for 20 centuries in an unbroken line. And even Justin the martyr, in the 2nd century, describes what you and I celebrate when we go to Mass.
Today, in essence, it's all there. It's all there. Now, what do you say to those who are, to put it gently, complaining about this new version of the Roman Missal? They say this language is a step backward, and it's taking the Church back pre-Vatican II. You would say what?
I think what we need to recognize is anytime you translate, and especially when you translate in an effort to get things done quickly, you have to say the next generation will do it better. And that's what this is all about. It was a good translation, but this is a better one. It's that simple. And I think that's all that this is about. The Church wants to make sure that when we pray, we're praying in the words as closely as we can to what's there in the original text.
The Mass, the Glory, the Mystery, the Tradition by Cardinal Donald Wuerl is available at bookstores everywhere and via EWTN's religious catalog. Until next week, you can find updates and the occasional commentary by following me on Twitter or on Facebook. You can go to my website, RaymondArroyo.com. Both the links are there. Those of you who follow me get not only previews of our shows, but additional material by our guests. And for a fun summer read, pick up Of Thee I Zing, America's Cultural Decline from Muffin Tops to Body Shots. It's available at retailers everywhere. Until next week, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, I'm Raymond Arroyo. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye now.